Welcome to Village Attacks, the game featured in the very first of this sort of, series. There is a place where evil calls home. Deep in the foothills of a secluded land stands a castle, where creatures of lore and legend reside, and from here they strike out at the world and cause unspeakable terror. For too long, the local villagers have lived in the shadow of this place, but no more. A call to arms has been made, and heroes and adventurers from across the land have answered the call. The villagers now come to destroy that which gives evil life, and they cannot be allowed to succeed. In Village Attacks, you play as the monsters and protect your castle in a tower defense style strategy game. The object of the villagers is to destroy the castle heart. The three monsters chosen for this playthrough, which were voted upon by our patrons, are the Lich, which is an arcane type monster of a decimator role. Starts out with one special attack, which may allow it to make a ranged attack into any room. It doesn't have to be adjacent nor offer line of sight. The second chosen monster, this one by default, and you may know why if you're a fan of this channel, the Werewolf, which is a curse type monster of the Guardian role. It has a wonderful little ability where it can use its melee attack to jump or pounce right into the adjacent room, making an attack as if ranged, including a move within it as well. And the third monster voted upon is the Succubus, which is a demon type monster and plays a support role. Sometimes during gameplay, villagers sneak closer. During that point, the Succubus has its special seduction ability, which may allow it to activate and move a villager that's closer. The point of this series was to do a playthrough, but without showcasing all the rules, die throws, etc., but rather as a cinematic ride for the viewers, being friendly for those that do not own the board game, care for board games, or possibly do own the board game, but want to see it played through by another person. The ultimate goal is to make it an entertaining adventure, behind the scenes, fully followed by the rules, but from camera view, a story adventure played out as a movie. But that is very hard to do and time consuming, etc., etc. I've been wanting to do this for many years. Finally, when I got around to doing it, it just took out too much out of me. I might attempt in the future to try this again, maybe not as cinematically pleasing, but at least in a way that showcases the game and the progression of it and the story, while letting the viewers know what our heroes attained, what kind of things they found. If it's a dungeon crawler, for example, it might still work out, so we'll see. Considering this is not necessarily a dungeon crawler, this is a castle defense game where, unlike in a traditional dungeon crawler, things don't pass on, you don't find things, complete quests, things like that. So maybe this wouldn't even be the best advocate for such a video. So what I'm doing here instead is a sort of quest log, all in all summarizing the first scenario. And let's get to that scenario. Lessons of the past, be it named. Essentially being the first scenario, the villagers' main aim, as pretty much always, is to get into the castle heart. But in this scenario, as soon as they step into it, you, the monsters, lose. In all the other scenarios, they have to actually destroy it. But here, if they just step foot inside, you lose. Which makes it actually quite a difficult scenario if you don't have the best dice rolls. Long ago in distant lands, there existed a castle like no other, for within its walls dwelled the largest gathering of evil the world has ever known. The countrymen lived in fear of this place, and though the horrors within filled their lives with terror and despair, they dare not act against them through fear of even greater horrors. But from the darkest pits of despair, desperation is born. So a party of villagers made plans to assault the castle and drive out whatever lurked in that bastion of the damned. So there you have it, Monstrites. The villagers have gathered enough guts and numbers to make an attempt at destroying our precious castle. In game, you have this dashboard which shows our castle heart to be at the number 5, so it is very weak. If the villagers lower that number or again step into the castle heart, we lose. The other dials are ignored in this scenario. And so it begins. The villagers have made it in, Peasants entered the main hall, and 5 hunters entered the armory. Hunters specified in hunting the cursed, which is our werewolf-type monster. These types of villagers are able to make ranged attacks. Having no interest in dealing with these wannabe heroes for now, the werewolf decides to head in the other direction. Rooms of interest here are the graveyard and the courtyard, which are both exposed to the sun. Let's just say not the most relaxing of places for our monsters, as that exposure makes them burn. The other room of interest is the armory, from which, as you would think, villagers can make stronger attacks. With enough waiting and anticipation, the first to act is going to be our werewolf. All lovely miniatures painted by yours truly. Let's learn a little bit more about this lycanthrope and see what other concept art was constructed during its creation. Werewolf, shape-shifting lycanthrope. There is a wolf like no other in this world, unnatural in every respect and burdened with contagious curse. Huge, savage, and wild werewolves were once men like you and I that have been attacked by fellow lycanthropes and lived to tell the tale. At this point, they may have considered themselves lucky, but a bloody and painful death would have been more merciful than the twisted existence that would soon come to bear. When the full moon rises, humans afflicted with this curse undergo a terrible transformation and become gargantuan wolf-human hybrids with a taste for human flesh. Silver is best defense against the beast, especially in a weaponized form such as bullets or arrowheads. And I gotta say, this beefy Mr. Hyde sort of werewolf is actually probably the thickest, buffest werewolf I've ever seen in any board game or statue or what it may be. And especially having that pounce ability, being able to jump into the next room and attack a villager immediately, that really all just completes and suits the way it looks. Before the werewolf does make its move, the lead villager seems to make it into the graveyard. Our werewolf spots him and immediately pounces upon him, making its first kill. After that, it picks up some broken tombstones and tosses them at the villagers in the hall, killing 2 more. And then, having had enough of the sunlight, the werewolf returns to the castle heart. And next, it is the turn of the succubus. Let's take a look at some of her sketches and form close up. Succubus, demonic temptress. Upon hearing the word demon, most minds would conjure images of frightfully repulsive creatures that seek your demise in the most macabre of fashions, which is why the succubus is such an anomaly, appearing as the epitome of beauty and allure that few men could deny. Succubi are seductresses that feed by engaging in sexual activities with humans. Initially, the engagement would appear harmless, but repeated liaisons with a succubus can completely drain the essence from a mortal being, rendering them a lifeless husk. If their beauty fails to entrap the hearts of men, then their siren-like voices will envelop their minds, convincing them to do their bidding with the minimal of efforts. The succubus, seeing that the werewolf has everything under control, heads toward the courtyard and into the dining hall. From there, she can make some ranged attacks with her daggers and possibly manipulate some villagers. And finally, it is the turn of the mighty Lich, ever-living sorcerer. Liches are born from mages who refuse to accept their own mortality. Through great effort and a lifetime of study, practitioners of magic have been known to escape death and live greatly beyond any mortal lifespan. But this knowledge always comes at great cost. And however noble the living mage was, a lich's existence is an evil one. There are limitations to a lich's power, and whilst the soul is preserved safely inside a phylactery, the body continues to wither and decay. The lich proceeds into the courtyard, seeking to aid the succubus within the dining hall. The lich proceeds to attack the hunters, slaying one with the magic from its powerful staff, after which it and the succubus conserve their energies and await for the last hunter to enter so they can destroy it in retaliation. And so it continues. The villagers move in, make their attacks, and then the monsters wreak their havoc back. We win the scenario here once all of our monsters have leveled up 1 time. After which, no more villagers enter the castle, and therefore the rest must be killed. And so our lich is the very first to level up, developing its skill in Zombify, which allows it to manipulate peasants' movements, moving them forward or away from the monster as it pleases. A powerful choice indeed, considering how important hero placement is in this very first scenario. More villagers burst in, more blood is shed on both sides, and eventually our werewolf has has made enough kills to feel a rush of energy through its body, it naturally progresses a skill known as Terror Struck, which forces peasants to not be able to leave the area that the werewolf is within. Again, another very helpful tactic in this first scenario, where as soon as a villager makes it to the castle heart, we the monsters lose. The werewolf howls strongly in a newfound confidence and pride, and the battles continue. As more villagers die, more scars appear on our monsters. At one point, our werewolf unfortunately begins to burn as the sun lights its furs aflame from entering and staying in that damned graveyard for too long. After much more bloodshed, our succubus finally arrives at a new, very beneficial awareness as well. Through these continued experiences around the villagers, she has perfected yet a new skill, a skill very appropriately fitting her character: infatuation, where villagers are simply mesmerized by her and will not attack her nor even hinder her from leaving their area. Oh, what games she can play now. She can wreak all the havoc she wants and get away with it without but a scratch. Now that all our monsters have leveled up, all that is left to do is to clear out the castle of the nuisance, the fleshbag pests that have very uninvitedly entered this unholy place. Therefore, after more greatly inspired battle, the monsters leave the floors bathed in blood. We have succeeded. The small human irritant has been pushed back, making for a successful first trial for our castlemate monsters. The villagers, small in number and unprepared for the task at hand, stood little chance against the fiends within, but something had been ignited in the hearts of the men, the fire of rebellion, and such a flame is not easily extinguished by a single failure. Well then, what does that mean, my friends? It means they'll be coming back. Oh yes, they will, and not only with peasants, hunters, but also with various heroes. Some heroes about as powerful as the monsters themselves. Is this all something to release a beautiful, dark, lengthy laugh at, or is this something grave that we, the monsters, should better prepare for? Overall, I do not recall how many waves of these villagers we did fend off. I believe it was either 4 or 5. I'm leaning more towards 5. Our werewolf got the most injured, but it was nothing too serious, as even if it dies, it respawns at the castle heart, but that does lower the castle heart's health. Everything is at a cost, as it should be. Next time if I do this sort of journaling, particularly for this type of game, I will note every monster's or character's kill count. At this point, it's a little bit too late for that, but I think that would be fun. As far as this first scenario of village attacks, I would say it's truly one of the hardest, because it is so, shall we say, dependent on luck. Because the speed at which the villagers move in and towards the castle heart is very important, and if you're not rolling the right dice, an attack dice, and you simply don't have enough attacks to slow the forces coming in, then they'll just make it in and you could lose the whole castle even at full health, which is not very high to begin with. I don't think this is the absolute best for a first scenario. I think that rule should have been changed and it would have been more balanced. It is a good scenario in a sense that it is simple and you're learning the game as you're progressing here. So you don't have the heroes yet, you don't have a huge troll that walks around, and different factors like that, as well as traps. It's a fun scenario for newcomers, but I wouldn't take it too seriously. If you do lose it, I'd say it's fine to move on to the next one, or say give it 2 or 3 tries, as it's a pretty fast game here. But the game being dependent on dice rolls and therefore luck, that doesn't have the biggest variety of options for mitigation, things can get really tough. And if you're more interested in my thoughts on that, I will be doing a review video on this game later. And that's a whole new review series that I'll be doing for board games as well. I will have different categories within which every board game gets different scores for an ultimate sort of final scoring. I'm really looking forward to that. As far as the options for the monsters in this scenario, that's the fun thing about this game, is you can replay it with different monsters, and every time you do, things feel a bit different because of the skills that they attain. As you saw the advancements of skills here, I'd say that skill progression is definitely one of the best parts of this game. The combination of monsters here really worked because the werewolf can do a lot of damage, as they all can, can, but with that pounce, it gets an extra move here and there that can really help it move around these zones. And fortunately, it and the Lich both had skills that control the peasant's movements, which is very important again in this specific scenario, so you can elect to upgrade to those abilities. The Succubus also had one that makes her essentially hardier, as she doesn't have the highest amount of health, but having that infatuation ability definitely gives her a better chance at standing against more villagers by herself, while you can separate the other monsters to other zones. So all in all, I think this group does work well together, especially in this scenario. We may see how they continue in future scenarios, as I would love to hear your thoughts on this type of playthrough and quest log of my journey through my board games. And if you're curious as to what other ones I have, I do have this countdown of my top solo games, which is a few months dated now, as I just unboxed 5 more brilliant games that I can't wait to share with you Monstroids. But do check that out to see where my appreciation stands with these sort of games and how much alike we are, as this may just be the channel that best fits your fancy within the board gaming tabletop gaming world.